getting into the standards and how do we standardize data across a variety of different players in this space, so we can address some of the concerns that come up in earnest in a conversation around this, around security and quality maintenance and quality assurance. And Mo's now been holding the charge on a group that has continued to move from there, called Open Know-How. And with that, I will let you queue up and tell us what you've been up to in this space.
Thanks, nice for the introduction. Also nice to see you again. There have been so many things happening the last 1-2 years, and it's amazing also how to see how this practically evolves. So these approaches here. Yeah, so as you heard of the introduction, I've been more involved into this abstract side of the issue, and also how to embed workflows and standards into the system, because it's not just how to respond to the crisis, but also how economy keeps on after the crisis. And especially in Europe, there's a surprising interest about that. So how circular economy could be embedded right now, because it would be a great moment as the economy is having issues anyway, and how cooperation can work, not just in Europe, but worldwide. Okay, so I prepared some slides. As I came in last minute, that was rather a draft, so apologize for the quality, but I guess I'm pretty sure you get the point anyway. You all can see them?
Yep.
Cool, thanks. All right, so open source hardware versus COVID-19, the crisis response, and so an effective open approach for that. So our starting point is this global pandemic, and this means that we will need, for instance, in India, 30 million ventilators, and we will need them by October maybe. So when I realized that these facts, some questions arise in my head, stuff like, who can actually do that? I mean, in terms of development and also the production capacities for all these ventilators, who will maintain, test, update, certify, whatever them, once they have been produced and developed and deployed? And what actually happens with them afterwards and with all these production capacities? So this is the conventional industrial approach doesn't really deliver satisfying answers to those. So I had a good time pitching an open approach. So share the challenges, share the knowledge, meaning everything, not just the design part, but also the research and everything which is going on in this area, and then solve the pandemic together and everywhere and sustainably. Cool. So distributed design is the buzzword of the hour. It all starts with a hardware design. The hardware design is sort of the source code for a piece of hardware. And whenever I say hardware here, I mean not just the full ventilator or a fully working machine. It could also just be a module, something like a valve, for example, which is inside a ventilator. So it doesn't really need to be developed, produced, maintained, whatever from one individual company, but just anyone. A lot of pieces put together. So we have the hardware design. This is getting produced by anyone, then it's getting used and maintained. And that's all made possible because the hardware design itself is open. So everyone gets the information which is needed in the chain, and I have individual stakeholders or different groups that are unable to do that. We also have continuous research going on the issue. So we are getting two feedback loops, one from the production usage and maintenance side, so the side of the deployment, and then also some research input, which leads to updates of the hardware design and then to the physical artifact of it. That's all being done by the community, and the community is not just an ominous character in the cloud. It's an ensemble of individual teams, manufacturers, users, service providers. So We see, first, we have a lot of interfaces to manage, and the center of everything happening is the technical documentation. So our approach to that, to handle that, and that may be a pretty German approach, but we felt we need some standards. So the two big things that we came up with were covering fundamental issues of the technical documentation, which is one thing, having it complete, because most of the hardware designs we found out there, which are not electronic, but also mechanic or mechatronical, are not complete. So they're more DIY, if you can just build them, but if you want to enable these feedback loops, you also need to modify them. So you need the original CAD files for all of the parts, and sharing these design files is a nice thing, but you also need to find them. If no one knows that you published that design, you will need to reinvent the wheel anyway. So for effective design reuse, we will need some standardized metadata as well. So we find what you actually need. And we also did things like defining a community-based attestation process for official reasons. That's interesting here, but to build a bridge to industry, public authority, and that's it. All right, and now that could work in practice. What that means is that the technical documentation is published somewhere. Alone in the English-speaking area, we have more than 80 different platforms where I could upload hardware designs like Wikifactory, Hackaday, Thingiverse, and so on. And so from that platforms, we can get the data attached with standardized metadata, so someone else is able to understand and read it and filter it. This is collected by quarters and put into a Wikibase instance. That's what I'm working on at the moment. So connecting all these dots, all these different hardware modules to one big graph database. So people, and an open database, of course, so people can, explore which hardware exists in a certain field of technology, which hardware is compatible to others. What? Sorry?
Oh, hearing you again. Apologies, Martin.
Okay, great. So a big graph database connecting all these open source hardware modules. So we see which modules are compatible to another, and also which modules exist in a certain field of technology. Yeah. So that's more of an outlook, what can be done with that. Yet we have this lead spec, and we also have the open know-how standard for the metadata. We already created a sample set of data, so it's still in an early phase. We're testing that. So our aim is to create until the end of summer 500 different projects, or create the metadata for those projects, and then test it in this graph database. I hope, but we are starting with COVID-19 projects, so I hope this can deliver value within this crisis already. But as I said, that's rather a thing for after the crisis, for how this collaboration can work afterwards. But yeah, anyway, these collaboration methods can be used already. Yeah, that's it. Thanks for listening. And for those who don't know me, I like very uncomfortable questions because they make the projects better. Thanks a lot.
That's such a great quote, Mo. I love that. I hope that the Q&A will reach that high bar that you set with uncomfortable questions. And you know, it's absolutely fantastic.